The champion for the Danes, in a dreadful fury, despairing of life, seized the hilt of the sword, swung its great blade and angrily struck, so that it dug deep in the neck of the monster, breaking the bone rings, slicing all the way through her body doomed by fate, and she fell dead on the floor. The sword sweat blood while the warrior rejoiced. Beowulf Age of Heroes is a monster hunting RPG built to create the kind of tales told of in the epic 8th century poem. And it should be no surprise if you have watched any of my videos on the system or my interview with game designer John Hodgson that I really enjoy this game. Age of Heroes uses the D&D 5e rule set, but there are a lot of excellent added systems and mechanics, so let's get into it. The first thing that brought me to this game was the setting, and Age of Heroes has a terrific section at the start of the book that gives some historical context for this period, including the peoples, settlements, landscapes, and some potentially controversial but historically significant topics like slavery and religion. When I was first looking into this game, I thought I might need to learn a lot more about this time period to really do it justice. However, Age of Heroes has enough historical information to give you a good understanding of the time. As well, it emphasizes that this is a mythic version of history, and there isn't a need to get the real history perfect. You also don't need to have read or studied the Beowulf poem to enjoy Age of Heroes. After all, you will not actually be playing as Beowulf himself or recreating the plot of the poem. Rather, you'll be using original backgrounds and classes to create a hero that fits into the early medieval period of the Anglo-Saxons. This is a low-power, low-magic setting that for me really captured the feel of a cold, grim time period that is full of all the mysteries of an unmapped, unconnected world. Even though this is technically set in the real world, there is a great sense of primeval forests, trackless oceans, and untrod mountains, where settlements stand as lonely beacons of safety in a strange and perilous world, where ordinary people scrape by to survive and heroes are needed because dragons, trolls, and other monsters do exist, not in some colorful high fantasy way, but as a harsh reality. And that is what I'd look for in an RPG, even more than mechanics. I want a game that really inspires me to tell and create stories, and Beowulf Age of Heroes does just that. As well, the heroes in Beowulf are supposed to be just that, heroes. They are good people who are trying to help and protect people. This is not a game to go around killing any NPC who stands in your way, or even to be rude to the various leaders you encounter, because you might be a mighty hero, but even you won't last very long without the hospitality and safety of a strong mead hall. The basic framework for the game is for one player and one GM, where the player hero will sail to different villages that are being plagued by a monster, and by monster I mean capital M monster, something beyond the scope of mere soldiers or kings to defeat, something that only a hero could even hope to overcome. This idea could have been done so poorly and become so repetitive if all that it involved was finding a big monster and rolling some dice until its hit points got down to 0. But Age of Heroes does something really brilliant. At the start of each adventure, the main monster is undefeatable. You can't just run up to it and start swinging. The monster will have some secret, some item or knowledge that is needed in order to face it. And that turns what could have been a very basic, combat-centric game into one about investigation, as the player talks to NPCs, scours giant-built ruins, and reads ancient writing in order to find out what is needed to defeat the monster. And don't worry, there will still be combat here, and there are some great changes to the standard 5e system. Just because there is a big monster doesn't mean there won't be other things to fight. In fact, besides human enemies, there will still likely be other monsters. These ones just have a lowercase m. The rulebook includes a whole host of enemies, including evil spirits, trolls, sea monsters, dragons, undead, animals, humans, giants, and more. The rulebook contains options to edit all the enemies presented. This can be done to make an enemy stronger or weaker, or options to make it the capital M monster of the adventure. Regular enemies can all be defeated or potentially avoided in the usual way, but they also come with an extra way to defeat them besides reducing them to 0 hit points. Often this will happen when an enemy gets down to half its hit points, but there are also more ways like taking damage twice in combat, having an ally killed, being brought out of its natural habitat, like water onto land, or if it is outnumbered. I really love this system, because I often find combat in D&D can feel like you're just hitting a big number with a stick until it becomes 0. And speaking of hitting stuff with sticks, Age of Heroes makes a few changes to weapons. Some weapons and armor have extra properties that might allow you to hook or destroy shields, knock over enemies, impress NPCs, as well as a few others. As a lone hero, you might fear that you won't stand much of a chance against the dangers of the Whale Road. This is where followers come in, and I really like this system. I have made a whole video just talking about followers that you can watch if you want to know more. The basic idea is that your hero will have a number of close comrades who join you on your quests. They are fairly rules-light to run, but will provide necessary aid when investigating, talking to NPCs, or fighting monsters. They will level up alongside you, but can be killed, permanently. And this is what I think I like best about them. I've talked about it before, and many others have as well, that in the standard 5e rules, healing is so easy that often players become invincible kind of quickly. And I'm not a GM that looks to kill player characters. My first goal when running a game is to create a good story. And having a character that a player has spent a lot of time writing and playing get killed in a mundane way doesn't make a very compelling story. However, I still want combat encounters to carry some weight, and to have the risk of consequences. Followers provide, I think, a perfect level of consequences for combat. Having a follower die is a serious, irrevocable blow to the player, and yet the story continues. Their character is still alive and can learn from the experience. The player can also gain new followers as well, which can allow them to try out different combinations of skills and abilities. Beyond that, the rules for running followers are simple enough to not bog down the game, and having the player journal from the perspective of one of the followers as a way to level them up gives a great connection to that follower instead of just being a collection of abilities. One other thing worth mentioning is the decision to have this game be for one player and one GM. While there are options for playing as a group, this experience is built for a single player, and I think that is the best way to play it for a few reasons. Followers are such a great system, and that is taken away if there is a group of players. The few extra properties of weapons could potentially slow down combat if there was a group, but it works well enough with a single player. As well, a one-on-one system has the main strength of a solo RPG in that it is much easier to set the tone and to focus on the stories you want to tell. However, in solo RPGs, you can't really have surprises, because as the player you are also the GM. In Beowulf, you are still able to have a GM set up twists and introduce unexpected events. Also, this is just a personal thing, but I do find one-on-one games more intimidating. When playing with a group, everyone is talking, and if the GM needs to look something up or prep some stuff, the players are still planning what to do next. But when playing with just one other person, there's something different about it. Anyways, having to only schedule 2 people instead of a whole group is certainly a bonus. And lastly, this game potentially could touch on real-world slavery, and Christianity is a large focus of the poem and this game. These could be touchy subjects that are easier to handle with less people. Moving on to the published adventures, they're great. If you want to get a good sense of the game, you can download the Hermit Sanctuary for free. The rulebook also includes a terrific adventure called The Three Ogre Brothers. Both of these stories gave me such a wonderful sense of epic poems and the best aspects of folklore. And then, if you want more, there is The Trial of the Twin Seas, which is a collection of 6 adventures written by different writers. I should also mention that the way Age of Heroes presents important NPCs is the best that I have seen, by using one clear block that includes a description, any challenge that the NPC will present to the hero, any advantage/disadvantage criteria, ways a follower can help with the challenge, various levels of success or failure, and whether it is possible to recruit the NPC as a follower. This layout is just so simple to follow and really clearly shows all the information the GM will need to run this character. I have almost no complaints about this game, but there are a few things I think could be improved. There are quite a few spelling mistakes throughout this book, but I know that there are a lot in my own adventures that I've written for the One Ring, and they are much shorter than these. All the same, hopefully future publications can get an extra proofreading pass. Some of the abilities for weapons require a natural 20 to activate, which happens less often than I would like. Possibly having a player say, for example, I'm going to try to hook the bad guy's shield, and having that happen on a success would put it more in the player's control. Or maybe be able to spend inspiration to achieve the effect. However, it is likely that the team at Handiwork Games play-tested various versions, and the one in the book came out on top. Lastly, for complaints, while the system of portents is really cool, the way the player and GM can use the inspiration gained from it didn't quite work for me, since it might have the player and GM taking tokens at the same time, at a point where the portent is applicable to current events. And that kind of feels like the inspiration points cancel each other out, but overall I really like this system and feel it could be used in any game where you want to generate a random prophecy. So that's it, my last video on Beowulf Age of Heroes, at least for a while. I really enjoy this system and I hope you'll be inspired to check it out. The rules are great and the setting is right up my alley. Speaking of which, one last thing on the setting. If you have a strong interest in ancient Greek mythology and stories like the Odyssey, with a few small changes, this game would work amazingly for that. D&D did put out a book called The Mythic Odysseys of Theros a few years ago that seemed to try to replicate ancient Greek myths, but I didn't really feel that it got it right. Also, I can't end without mentioning the awesome partial gloss cover that reveals the knot design. It really makes this one of the coolest covers I have seen. That's all for now. The next video out on this channel will be talking about the Eye of Mordor in the One Ring. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great day.